Chapter 98. He found Livia waiting for him at the Deadland Motel. Ryan drove to the meeting spot in his Plymouth Fury, having repaired his car after the land wrecked it. Though he had to drown it with perfume to hide the junkyard's stench. The courier himself had switched from his normal clothes to an elegant black jacket with a purple polo shirt underneath, with no bright color to be seen. Darkling would have loved it. A pity he couldn't raid Dynama's cashmere factory without putting the company on high alert or starting a war with the Augusti. Neither could he use Micron's matter replicator without Alchemo jailbreaking the mainframe first. Of course, Ryan could have always spent money, but a cashmere suit wasn't bought. It was taken, by either strength or wits. Livia had put a lot of effort into her appearance too, more than Ryan had ever seen her do. She wore an elegant sleeveless dress and golden bracelets, but also black stockings, red high heels, and golden earrings. She had put a lovely crimson rose in her hair, black linings around her eyes. It contrasted well with her sapphire eyes and the silver hair flowing on her back. Though she couldn't compare with her best friend Fortuna in the beauty department, Ryan found Livia quite lovely. A true princess. She hadn't seen him yet due to the ambient darkness, so he watched her from afar for a short while. Livia waited in the parking lot, with her hands joined. She fidgeted in place, and let out a long, heavy breath as if to calm herself. She hadn't seen how the date would end, and it made her nervous. Ryan drove to her side, ending her silent agony. Livia immediately corrected her expression upon noticing him, smiling warmly at his arrival. "Did you order a pumpkin carriage, princess?" the courier asked, upon stopping in front of her. "Will your car turn into a vegetable at midnight?" she teased him, while sitting at his side. Her perfume smelled of rose and strawberry. "This only leaves 3 hours. Livia, I can time travel. I can make 3 hours last a lifetime." "I don't doubt that," she said, closing the car's door behind her. "But I would prefer it if you could bring me home before 2 in the morning, or my father might get upset." "You've never had a sleepless night out in town?" Ryan asked, amused, as he drove away through New Rome's streets. It was about time I came into your life." Livia blushed a little, embarrassed. "I wasn't that sheltered," she protested. "With my power, I could experience wild moments by proxy, with none of the hangovers, drowsiness, and side effects that came with it. Watching is not the same as living." "No, but I don't enjoy parties that much," she admitted. "I prefer simpler moments with just a few friends. The more people surround me, the more my power goes into overdrive. Too many interactions at once." "Cancel blocks your visions?" Ryan asked, his date answering with a short nod. "You could always hang out with her then." Livia shook her head. "I don't like Greta. That woman is capable of anything. She could be just as hideously violent as Adam the Ogre, if she had any motivation." Lightning Butt's daughter frowned, as they approached the highway where Ryan and Felix once engaged her Aunt Pluto in the car chase. "Where are we going?" "Away," Ryan replied. She blinked in surprise. "Away from the city? Well, I figured you probably visited all of New Rome's restaurants, either directly or with your power. But there is one place I'm sure you've never been to before." "Within an hour's drive of New Rome?" Livia asked with skepticism, before grinning wickedly. "I doubt so. Unless you intend to take me out of the city to ravish me in the wilderness. Did you bring a chastity belt?" "It has been a while since I unlocked one." Livia's smile turned coy and playful. The young woman wasn't as innocent as she let it seem. "If my father heard you, he would have you struck down. I have a lightning rod in the car boot." "Does your father even know you're in a car with a dashing courier?" His date's mischievous smile was an answer in itself. "Would he let you date anyone?" "Only an Augusti. My father mistrusts anyone outside of our clan. He wouldn't let Felix anywhere near me again, even if—" Her bashful smile turned sour. "So you're disobeying him even as we speak?" Ryan mused, trying to distract her from her bad memories. "You live a dangerous life." His date chuckled in response, which Ryan took as a good sign. "Not as much as yours. To be fair, you're the first to dare to ask me out at all." Most men are simply too frightened to try. She looked at him warmly. That's one of the things I like about you, Ryan. You dare it all. You haven't seen anything yet, he replied, a foot on the accelerator. Is your seatbelt tightly on? Yes, she gasped in surprise, as the Plymouth Fury raced on the highway. 100 kilometers per hour turned into 150, while Ryan switched the chrono radio to Mad Max 2 single-quote-s main theme. They passed by two cars, violating all road safety laws as they went. Stop. Olivia pleaded as the speed kept climbing, a hand on his arm. She screamed as they passed by a car so closely that they nearly brushed against it. Though she could sense the cars coming, she couldn't foresee how Ryan would react to them, if he did. Stop, you madman. Don't try this at home, kids. The courier said, using brief bursts of time stop to avoid colliding with other vehicles. Olivia's scream of fear transformed into laughter, as the adrenaline pumped through her veins and the Plymouth Fury reached its maximum velocity. Ryan had modified his car to reach over 300 kilometers per hour, and at this speed, the world around them turned into a blur. Other cars became spots of color, the highway ahead became a tunnel of light. If only Ryan could have driven his Plymouth Fury rather than the Pondamobile when Pluto came for his head. Cruella would never have come within an inch of his car. Once he sensed they were close to their destination, Ryan activated a hidden button. The car hood opened to reveal a genius device, the tip of a particle accelerator. Tiny light spheres came out of it, stretching reality apart. Have you watched Back to the Future? Ryan grinned at Olivia. She answered with a panicked, exhilarated scream, as particles swallowed the Plymouth Fury. The stars above fell down in a rain of light, reality itself shifting around them. Space stretched on until it shattered, and the car emerged on the other side. Ryan hit the brakes and the device deactivated. The Plymouth Fury emerged from a particle cloud to slow down beneath alien skies, on a highway without cars. Olivia let out a heavy breath, as she recovered from the adrenaline rush. Only then did Ryan notice that her left hand held his right tightly. She must have seized it instinctively when they reached maximum speed. Ryan's thumb brushed against her warm fingers, and Olivia squeezed tighter in return. You okay? The courier asked her. Instead of answering, she broke the hand contact and slapped him behind the head in response. Ouch. You madman. Olivia let out a nervous laugh, as the tension went down. That was insane, Ryan. We'll have to do it again, on the way back. Oh, God. She smiled, catching her breath. Did you ever get a driver's license? Now, don't ask too much. Olivia giggled, and glanced outside her window. Her eyes widened upon seeing the world around them. While they were still on the highway, purple auroras had taken over the night sky above them. The northern lights shone with the brilliance of stars, and within them one could glimpse images of strange places. Seas of mercury, clouds of floating ice, green lightning coursing through black, empty space. The highway was deserted except for the Plymouth Fury, and seemed to stretch on forever. The land around the road had turned into a red desert, though one could see another highway in the distance. Even the temperature had increased, from chilly to warm and comforting. What is this place? Olivia asked as they exited the car, astonished. A thin place. A natural space anomaly, if you will. Ryan moved to the car boot, where he kept the dinner. I nicknamed it the Midnight Road. I see other people, Olivia said, pointing at two silhouettes on the second highway. That's us. Ryan raised his hand, and the silhouette on the distant highway imitated him. Do you see? No. The Augusty princess had tears at the edge of her eyes. No, I can't see anything. She wasn't talking about her eyes. In the end, they sat at the highway's edge, their feet dangling about the desert. Ryan offered Olivia a sushi box, and chopsticks to go with it. Space folds back? His date asked after wiping away the tears, looking at the other highway in the distance. Yep, Ryan replied, his mouth full of fish. The highway stretches for 30 kilometers, and then loops back. It's shorter on the sides. Did you make this place? Olivia asked, tasting a futomaki with a curious frown. Or did another genome build it? Ryan shook his head. It's a natural phenomenon, though you need genius tech to access it. The colored dimensions are above our realities, beyond space and time as most humans understand it, but there are other realms sideways too. They follow the same time stream as our own. So this is an alternate universe? I wouldn't say that. It's more like a cave inside a mountain, except the mountain is Earth's reality. A place where space-time folds due to gravitational or electromagnetic anomalies. Ryan glanced at the purple auroras above their heads. I think this place is close to the purple world. Like a border realm between our universe and the big crossroads of all space and time. I cannot observe anything within the color's dimensions, except the blue one, Livia guessed. That is why I can't detect you either, since you exist in 2 dimensions at once. Ryan nodded, before noticing that his date didn't seem enthusiastic about finishing her plate. You don't like the food? I'm sorry. She made an embarrassed smile. I hate it. Ryan's heart skipped a beat. You hate Japanese food. I don't like sushi, no. Livia sheepishly shook her head. I'm sorry. God damn it, he knew he should have picked French food. Nobody disliked French food, except the British and the truly wicked. But I love the place, and the gesture, Livia immediately reassured him, when she saw his dejected face. It more than makes up for the food. I will have to reload now, Ryan grumbled. The date is not perfect. No, Ryan, no, Livia protested, instantly serious. She put a hand on his arm and squeezed it tight. No, don't, please. It's because this moment is genuine that I enjoy it so much. Relax. I was kidding, Ryan teased her, his index finger brushing against her cheek. She blushed so much that a scarlet streak had formed beneath her eyes. Though you've got a smile to die for. Livia exploded into laughter, almost spitting out her food. The sound of her voice warmed Ryan's old, weary heart. Does that pick-up line ever work? She asked with a wide grin on her face. More than you think. But not on me, she said, as he removed his hand. You will have to do better. You might regret it. I invented lines so powerful, that a few countries made them illegal. His date rolled her eyes, and dared to put his boast to the test. Then prove me wrong. Instead of answering with words, Ryan put the sushi plates aside, and grabbed Livia by the waist. His date let out a squeal of surprise as he quickly lifted and put her on his lap. She weighed almost nothing, their feet dangling into the void. Ryan. Livia laughed, so red the courier wondered if she might faint from the embarrassment. You're going too far this time. Come on, my lap feels better than the interdimensional highway's concrete. He put his arms around Livia and held her tight, her head resting against his shoulder. Unless your majesty would prefer a nobler seat? I ought to have you whipped for your insolence, but I have the feeling you might enjoy it. You would be right, mistress. The mafia princess laughed heartily, accepted the throne of Romano as her seat, and made herself comfortable. Her back rested against the courier's chest, and he sensed her hastening heartbeat beneath her skin. Though the scarlet streak across Livia's face had transformed into a light blush, Ryan could tell the situation was new to her. She had only ever dated Felix, who had never been as comfortable with physical contact as the courier was. Can you reach these places? Livia pointed a finger at the alien mirages in the skies, pictures of alien worlds, unlike Earth. Some, Ryan confirmed. Others I plan to visit one day. Take me with you when you do, she all but ordered him, sounding like a true queen. To make up for your bold transgression. And what if I commit crime after crime? He teased her. Maybe I will punish you, or maybe not, Livia replied coyly, putting her hands on his own. They felt warm and comforting to the touch, like Jasmine's had been. How did you even find out about these thin places? Did you stumble into one by accident? I learned of them while researching particle physics in Switzerland. Ryan shuddered. Don't go to Monaco. What is happening in that place? She asked, curious. My power will not show me. I heard nobody that goes there come back. But you said you lived a full life there? Shrimps, and caviar, Ryan replied darkly. Even now both gave him PTSD. It's shrimps and caviar, until you can't take it anymore. That doesn't explain anything. Livia frowned, sensing his unease. Something happened in this place. Something that hurt you deeply. Ryan's first instinct was to deny the truth, but her firm gaze dissuaded him. The courier trailed off, having lived with this secret like a boulder around his ankle like a ball and chain. He had never told anyone, carrying that cross across time. Nobody would have understood. But she would. He could see it in her eyes. Livia had watched whole lifetimes through her power, from what she had told him. She couldn't comprehend the sheer weight he carried, but she could imagine it. I told you I stayed there a full life, Ryan unburdened himself. I meant a full life. Livia guessed the truth. Her expression shifted into one of horror, as she covered her mouth with a hand. No. Ryan looked away at the otherworldly desert beneath the highway, without uttering a word. Is that why you always say you're immortal? Livia's eyes softened in compassion. Does Lynn know? No. Shorty already had enough burdens on her frail shoulders, and ghosts of her own. You're the only one. Did you? The seer bit her lower lips, as if afraid to go on. At that moment, Livia reminded Ryan of Len so much. They shared the same kind heart, beneath all the hardships. Did you have a family? I never dared to, he confessed. If my timing was even slightly off during the conception, then a different child would be born from loop to loop. I wouldn't have survived it. Not mentally. I'm sorry I asked that, Livia apologized. She turned her head, and her hand touched his chin to make him look up at her. The seer struggled to find the right words to comfort him, until she did. I've seen other lives I could have lived with Felix, Livia confessed, her gaze sad and regretful. Growing old together, having children. I saw these possibilities, but I couldn't make them true. I won't pretend I understand what you went through, because... She let out a brief sigh. Because watching is not living. But you know how deep the pain goes. Yes, I do. Her hand brushed against his cheek. You don't have to suffer alone, Ryan. Now you don't have to suffer anymore. I will help you with your burden, I swear. Thanks. He took her left hand and kissed it gallantly. Now that he had her, Ryan could carry others through time. He could build lasting friendships, maybe even a family. The courier could finally create a future he was happy with. I will return the favor. You already did, Livia admitted, sounding as tired as he was. I've had this power for nearly a decade and a half, Ryan. Truthfully, I've never gone on without it for so long since I was a child. It's refreshing, but scary too. I get it. I feel that way whenever cancel enters the picture. My power can be a pain, but it's reassuring. In the end, Ryan's elixir had tried to help. The entity had remained at its human side for centuries, sharing his hardships and victories. I figured the best thing I could offer you was the unexpected. It was a wonderful gift. Livia fell silent, gazing at the alien horizon. Something weighed on her mind too. Ryan guessed what? You've seen your father wage war in the future. Ryan, this is a blissful moment. Let us not ruin it with my sorrows. I thought I already beat you to the gloomy confessions? He asked, tightening his hold on her waist, his cheek brushing against her neck. Let's be honest, we'll never find better therapists than each other. Livia chuckled, though it sounded bittersweet. Yes, I've seen it, she admitted with a heavy heart. One night, I dreamt that Felix would barge into my room riding a white stallion, and carry me away from this city. It was a little girl's foolish dream, but I hoped it would come true one day. Would you settle for a knight in power armor? Ryan jested. Lasers are the new swords. Do you know Dynamis has lightsabers? Livia asked him playfully. Perhaps you should grab one. A blue one. And you take the red, Queen Crimson? I love the dark side, his accomplice joked back. But I prefer you on the side of the angels. Come on, we had the most fun in our meta run. Though the end was a lot grimmer than expected. Yes, But no matter how much you try to hide it, Ryan, your true self shines through. Your good, gentle self. Her smile faltered. What father plans to do? I will stop it, you have my word. I will help. You already did, more than you know. More than you should have. Olivia looked into his eyes. You don't have to go further, Ryan. No, I don't, he agreed, meeting her gaze with a determined one of his own. But I want to. They locked eyes for minutes afterward, Ryan seeing multiple emotions flash through Olivia's blue eyes. Surprise, compassion, joy, gratitude. And something else. Something deeper, and more intense. We should go, Ryan said. It's past midnight. Not yet, his date replied, staring at the skies. Let us stay a little longer. They sat there in a comfortable silence, watching the auroras. In the end, Ryan brought Olivia back to Mount Augustus. He stopped before the fortified fence circling the hill, right as the clock struck 2 in the morning. Right on time, Princess, the courier said, glancing at his fellow genome. So, what's my date review? 10 out of 10, 12.5 without factoring in the food? She didn't answer. Olivia had spent the whole return trip without saying a word, her head resting against the palm of her hand, her eyes gazing beyond the window. Perhaps she regretted that her blue power now worked again. Ryan cleared his throat, slightly embarrassed by the silence. Olivia. I need to show you something, she shook her head, peeking out of the car's window and at the entrance portal's camera. After a minute of waiting, the doors opened for them. If you want to. Ryan had a pretty good idea of what awaited him, but he needed to be sure. You understand that your father will know. Olivia looked into his eyes, and he understood. She had made that choice because of her father, knowing the consequences. It was an act of rebellion. Ryan drove the Plymouth Fury upward, towards the villa at Mount Augustus summit. He glimpsed guards protecting the property, but paid them no mind. Eventually, he parked his car near the house's entrance, exiting it with Olivia. The Auguste princess led him into the villa through the front door, none of them saying a word. Though it was dark inside, she knew the place like the back of her hand and guided them through whitened corridors. Lightning Butt had devised his home like a true Roman villa, showcasing an obsession with marble deity statues and pillars that bordered on the pathological. Ryan didn't pay his surroundings much attention. His eyes remained firmly focused on Olivia's back, as he followed her. He could see shivers along her naked shoulders, her body rife with anxiety and tension. Eventually, she led him to a room with a large red door. The seer froze for a few seconds, let out a heavy breath, and opened it. Ryan walked into a bedroom almost as large as his luxury apartments, back when he worked for Illinois Meteori. Unlike the rest of the villa, it had been decorated in a more modern style. Paintings of cities, of smiling families, and natural wonders covered the walls, next to shelves full of dusty books. A reinforced window provided a direct view onto a beautiful terrace outside, and a king-sized bed lined up against a wall. Olivia wordlessly sat on the mattress after closing the door behind them, and joined her hands together. She didn't face Ryan, her eyes looking down at the ground. Her face was red, her breathing short, and she seemed terrified of asking him a single question. Ryan cleared his throat. Olivia. Do you want to kiss me? She asked meekly while looking up at him, afraid of his reaction. His lips met her own, and she didn't say another word for the rest of the night. Neither of them did. Chapter 99. It was May 8th for the 17th time, and Ryan Romano had died happy. Or he could have, as he woke up in a king-sized bed and in Olivia's arms. Ryan had beat up goal again in his sleep, only to quickly snap out of this nightmare. And a nightmare it had been. The courier usually didn't care about dying and beginning again, even in his dreams, but now he did. He didn't want her to forget him. Olivia was holding him even now, her arms around his neck, her breasts on his chest, a leg over his thigh. Her hair covered her restful face like silver strands. The seer was warm to the touch, and she lightly snored, which Ryan found cute. Still, he might have to sleep with earplugs from now on. Ryan Romano had been with countless people in his long life, and in his mind, Lovemaking said a lot about a person's character. Len had been hesitant, clumsy, and vulnerable. The doll, curious and playful. Jasmine had been wild, energetic, and liked weird roleplay. Livia, though, it had been right. Just right. Like fitting the right key in a lock. Livia was less experienced than her partner, but she was delicate, attentive, and considerate. And she laughed, sometimes at the most inappropriate time. Ryan couldn't explain why, but her laughter relaxed him. For a moment, the courier completely forgot about Psycho's bloodstream, and the fact he just bedded Lightning Butt's daughter in his own house. He only cared about the lovely woman in his bed. For an instant, Livia was his world. He wanted to wake her up, to face her, and hold her hands while they kissed. He wanted to hold her, to become one with her. But the seer slept so soundly, and so blissfully, that Ryan couldn't bring himself to disturb her rest. In her own dreams, Livia looked happier than the courier had ever seen her. Ryan was hungry though. The courier had noticed a kitchen on his way to Livia's bedroom, so he would go prepare the breakfast. He was sure Augusta's daughter would love to wake up in front of pastries. Livia wouldn't let Ryan go though, even in her sleep. When the courier tried to sneak out of the bed, she just held him tighter. He had to freeze time to escape her grip and put a pillow in his place, but a frown appeared on the seer's face as time resumed. The sight made Ryan feel. It took him a while to figure out the right word. Loved. Ryan felt loved. Livia wanted him at her side so much, she wouldn't let him go even in her dreams. Once, the time traveler would have backed away in fear afterward. Fear that he might die, and that this moment would lose its significance. Fear of the pain he would feel, if Livia forgot him. But now? Now, Ryan wanted to return to her. It took all his willpower, and screaming stomach, not to slip back into the bed. The bedsheets, no, the whole room reeked of sex, so Ryan opened the windows to let the fresh air in. The morning sun outside blinded him and burnt his skin like a vampire, though he quickly recovered. Only redheads have to fear the morning sun, for they lacked a soul. Ryan thought of putting on his clothes, but they were dirty. Instead, the naked courier explored the bedroom and found a white bathrobe with cat motifs. The time traveler wondered if it had once belonged to Felix, before putting it on alongside the slippers. Before moving to the door, Ryan took a moment to examine the paintings in the bedroom. Some represented Livia as a child with two people whom he recognized as her parents. Augustus always looked grim in reality, but his painted self smiled warmly. It made Mobzu seem less like a bloodthirsty monster, and more like a human being. Most importantly, he hadn't turned into an ivory statue then, his hair white and his eyes blue like his daughter. As for his wife, she was a carbon copy of Livia, albeit older and stouter. Other pictures represented cities like New York, with one tower in place of the World Trade Center. A painting of Paris had zeppelins flying in the sky alongside steam-powered devices. It seemed Livia liked to paint about alternate universes in her spare time. Or perhaps she dreamed of happier realities than her own. In any case, Ryan silently slipped out of the bedroom, and quickly found his way to the kitchen. Unlike the straight antiquity style of the rest of the villa, the architect designed this room to mix the old and the new. High-tech fridges and ovens faced a 5 meters long marble counter and ivory statues of Roman deities. Venus and Mars holding hands, Jupiter triumphant, Diana and Apollo hunting side by side. How could Ryan resist making breakfast in such divine company? The courier searched the room, and found a silver platter. He put it on the marble counter, and started preparing the breakfast. Livia was quite skinny, which Ryan found unhealthy, so he prepared fried eggs, bacon, coffee, and French croissants. The courier would make pancakes for her tomorrow. Ryan raised his eyes to look at the statues while he prepared the breakfast. Maybe it was sleeplessness, but the statue of Jupiter seemed vaguely familiar. Very familiar. Ryan blinked, one hand holding a knife and the other a buttered toast. The Jupiter statue was a carbon copy of Augustus, standing still while gazing at the counter. The courier dropped everything and moved to the side, but the statue's eyes didn't follow. Come to think of it, Lightning Butt always kept a shroud of lightning around his face, to intimidate others. This statue had none. Was Mob Zeus arrogant enough to populate his own villa with statues in his likeness? Or was it something else? Ryan knew he should take the platter and return to Olivia, but he couldn't suppress his morbid curiosity. The time traveler moved in front of the statue, and waved his hand before its eyes. No reaction. Oh, look outside, it's a wild Hargraves. Ryan pointed at the kitchen's window, and the sunlight outside. Quick, he's getting away. The statue didn't react. It didn't breathe, didn't blink, didn't do anything. Damn, Discount Zeus was arrogant enough to build statues of himself and put them in his kitchen. Ryan poked the ivory construct in the nose, and decided to call it quits. This time, Augustus woke up. The ivory statue's eyes glanced down at Ryan, blinking a few times. It reminded the terrified courier of a grandpa with Alzheimer's, suddenly remembering his son's face. Was Lightning Butt sleeping with his eyes open, like a crocodile? Or did his tumor cause him to have a brain seizure? Hey, what's up? Ryan asked, trying to lighten up the atmosphere. He better make a good impression, as Lightning Butt wouldn't take anyone dating his daughter well. Who are you? Augustus asked, his eyes squinting. There was no fear nor surprise in his voice, which Ryan found quite intimidating. The tyrant was so confident in his own power, that catching an intruder in his own home didn't even faze him. I'm Batman, Ryan replied, trying to sound calm. However, he couldn't shake the ominous feeling of dread pervading the room. Whom? Lightning Butt observed Ryan's bathrobe, his eyes flaring with crimson lightning upon recognizing the outfit. This belongs to my daughter. In hindsight, sleeping with Lightning Butt's daughter beneath his own roof might not have been Ryan's brightest idea. You know what, don't mind me, I'll take the do. Ryan tried to take a step back, but Augustus swiftly grabbed his shoulder with his right hand. Lightning Butt had invaded his personal space, like Germany with Poland. You are not going anywhere, Lightning Butt said, his tone suddenly a lot more threatening. Thief. Of what? A bathrobe. Ryan would have bore that badge with pride if it had been a cashmere suit, but he wouldn't go to war for cotton. Nah, I'm rich. Rich people didn't steal, that was known. I'm a good friend of your daughter, and she invited me for a sleepover. Lies, Augustus replied, his grip on Ryan's shoulder tightening. It didn't hurt yet, but the courier could tell that the murderous mob boss would tear him in half at the slightest provocation. My daughter would inform me. She knows the rules. I do not know how you bypass the guards, but you were foolish to come here. It was late, you can check the cameras or ask Livy. You will not get anywhere near my blood, Augustus interrupted him. Now, tell the truth before I tear off your limbs. Damn it, that paranoid psychopath wouldn't listen. Ryan looked into the madman's eyes, and saw that nothing the courier could say would change his mind. One glance, and Lightning Butt had already condemned the courier to death. Ryan could try running back to Livia to clear this up, but Mob Zeus could move inside his time stop and zap him with lightning. And if the courier perished now, then Livia would forget that night. She would forget him. The courier had to delay, and pray for Lightning Butt's daughter to wake up. I will not repeat myself again, Augustus said, tempting fate. Where did you find? Ryan froze time, and didn't move. As far as the world was concerned, he had stopped just like everything else. These clothes. Augustus blinked, glanced around, and let out a sound that could pass for a sigh. He waited several seconds for the effect to end, with a look of resigned acceptance. I'm sorry, sir? Ryan asked when time resumed, feigning confusion. Thankfully, he had an excellent poker face. What did you say? I said that. The clock stopped again, and once more Ryan feigned being paralyzed. Augustus let out a snarl of anger and frustration, much to the courier's deep satisfaction. The mob boss clenched his jaw, even after the flow of time resumed. I'm sorry, sir, Ryan apologized, delighting at the ivory man's frustration. After watching this selfish prick try to murder Leo Hargraves as the world collapsed around them, It felt quite good. To add insult to injury, the courier looked at Lightning Dad as if he had gone senile. "Do you need medicine, sir?" Augustus waited a bit longer, half expecting time to freeze again. Finally, once he thought himself safe, he opened his mouth again. I said, time froze again. Instead of sighing or raging, Augustus squinted at Ryan, his expression thoughtful. "I can see electrons move in your brain. You were not affected by this temporal anomaly. You are its source. Damn, Lightning Butt was brutal but not stupid. Stop this at once." Ryan didn't break character, even as time resumed. Augustus waited a few more seconds, his face undecipherable, before opening his mouth again. As I said, and time stopped again. Augustus' hand moved from Ryan's shoulder to his neck and lifted him above the ground. "You dare to mock me?" Mob Zeus snarled angrily. The courier kicked and punched the invincible man's arm in the frozen time, but he didn't even notice. Unlike when Ryan struck him in the previous loop, Augustus didn't react with shock at someone being capable of harming him. The time traveler's blows couldn't hurt him. Damn it, as he had guessed, Ryan needed the Saturn armor to use his black superpower. He couldn't damage Lightning Butt without it. "You would strike me? Madness." Augustus sneered as time resumed. "This is your last chance. Where did you find these clothes?" "In your daughter's wardrobe," the courier blurted out. Lightning Butt noticed the sparkle in Ryan's eyes, alongside his messy hair. The Ivory Man's eyes noticed the breakfast for two, prepared with love, and he finally understood. The Augusty patriarch didn't want to admit it though. His fingers tightened around the courier's neck, squeezing the air out of him. "What did you do?" he snarled, lifting Ryan higher until his head touched the ceiling. "What did you do to my daughter?" Ryan wanted to say something clever, but Augustus squeezed his throat so tightly that no word came out. Lightning Butt eventually realized the interrogation wouldn't go anywhere like this, eased his grip enough to let the time traveler breathe, and looked into his captive's eyes. "Did you sleep with my daughter?" Augustus asked, his cold fury 10 times more threatening than his snarls. Knowing nothing he said would save him, Ryan answered with the first thing that came to mind. "Yes, Daddy, yes." Augustus brutally slammed Ryan against the counter. A normal human would have gone splat from the impact, and the shock made the marble crack. The silver platter almost fell off to the ground, and one of the coffee cups shattered. Ryan saw stars for a moment and landed on the ground, chest first. Lightning Butt released his grip while his victim gasped for air. "You will die begging," Augustus said with cold fury, towering over the courier like the specter of death. His whole body cackled with crimson lightning, the microwave and electrical devices in the room malfunctioning. Like a Jew on a cross. And it was. Ryan coughed, defiant. Unprotected. Lightning Butt gave Ryan the Palpatine electroshock treatment, by zapping him with electricity. It was a low-current blast, not enough to kill the courier. But it hurt. It hurt like hell. A lightning bolt hit Ryan in the chest, his skin burning, the bathrobe releasing smoke. The courier's body trembled, the nerves in his body stimulated by the lightning. It felt as if his body had caught fire, his lungs melting. "Dad!" Her shrieking voice echoed in the kitchen, but Augustus kept zapping Ryan with murder on his mind. If anything, he only increased the voltage, even as time skipped forward, and when it resumed, her arms immediately seized him. The pain in his chest remained, alongside severe burns, but no lightning coursed through Ryan's nerves anymore. He had crawled near the statue of Minerva, with Livia kneeling protectively at his side. She wore a black bathrobe of her own, but no slippers. The seer must have rushed into the kitchen the second she woke up. Lightning Butt dropped the lightning halo surrounding his head, though rage still possessed him. Augustus sternly gazed at Livia. "You used your power on me, daughter? You were electrocuting my boyfriend." She hissed back. Though Lightning Butt had shrugged off Ryan's blow, his daughter's words made him flinch in surprise. If he still had any doubt about what happened, her revealing dress and the intimate way she held Ryan close dispelled them. The courier could hear Livia's accelerating heartbeat beneath the cotton. You willingly gave yourself to this. Augustus glared at Ryan with disgust. This miscreant? Ryan is nothing of that sort, Livia replied with a frown. He is a kind and noble man. Conqueror of Monaco. Ryan rattled, his muscles still struggling to move. The crimson lightning must have messed up his nervous system, the wrong limbs answering his mental commands. Augustus completely ignored the courier, refusing to acknowledge his existence. Instead, he studied his daughter with an imperious gaze. Yet Livia refused to back down and locked eyes with her sire. How long? Lightning Butt questioned his daughter. Livia frowned, biting her lower lips. A little more than 1 week. That long? Ryan wondered, before realizing that she counted the previous loop. They could consider the Star Studio raid their first date. Is this about Felix? Augustus asked angrily. Revenge for his abandonment? No, Livia replied angrily. I chose Ryan for himself. You chose wrong. Lightning Butt's eyes flared with a burst of lightning. Look at this clown. I have seen his kind countless times. All he wants is your beauty, your money, your power. He is a parasite. You say that about everyone, Dad. Because it is true. Do you think he would be interested in you if you weren't my daughter? You don't know him, Dad, Livia replied, her gaze harshening. And if you think I wouldn't have done my research, then you don't truly know me either. Ryan almost opened his mouth, but this time wisely remained silent. One wrong move and Lightning Butt might slay him before Livia could react. The shame and the pain, he could live with. But her forgetting him would hurt far deeper than the lightning. Augustus' face twisted into an angry scowl. Livia, step aside. She briefly hesitated, but held her ground. No, father. Step aside, daughter. No, she repeated, the word so sweet to hear. I won't let you murder him like Narcinia's parents. Augustus' eyes widened in surprise, his jaw clenching. Who told you about that? Felix. Does it matter? Felix, her father said, reaching his own conclusions. He will pay for this slander with his tongue. You won't touch his tongue, or any part of Felix, Livia declared, grabbing Ryan's hand. Nor will you harm my current boyfriend. I'm an adult, I can date whoever I want. I am your father, Augustus raised his tone, and you shall obey me. If you touch them, I will leave. These words silenced Lightning Butt, making him blink repeatedly. He looked as if he would stumble. The illusion of invincibility was stripped away, and for a brief moment, Ryan could see the lonely, paranoid old man beneath the iron-fisted dictator. I will leave, Livia said, struggling not to cry. I will go, and I will not return. Bacchus and Mars can have your rotten empire of filth for all I care. Livia. Augustus' tone softened a little. For the first time, Ryan heard something other than wrath and cruelty in the Titan's voice. You are my heir, and my daughter. But you are still a young woman, and naive. Experience comes with age, and it is my duty as your father to protect you from threats you cannot see. Your mother. I can protect myself, Livia replied firmly. Even from you. Augustus' fist tightened, to the point that a normal person might have started bleeding. Could the superpowered tyrant cancel his own power? Could he hurt himself? I could not protect your mother, but I will protect you. Felix is a shameless traitor, and this little shit. Lightning Dad glared at the courier, with the same hatred he usually reserved for Leo Hargraves. This man is turning you against me, your own father. No, Dad, Livia argued firmly. You are doing that on your own. Augustus turned into an ivory statue, as still as stone. Dad, please. I want him. Livia breathed deeply. He is kind to me, and he makes me smile. Augustus' silence stretched on for several, agonizing seconds. The air was heavy with an undercurrent of electricity, as if a thunderstorm might explode any moment. The microwave had short-circuited. You, Mob Zeus glared at Ryan. What is your name? By now, the courier had recovered enough to form complete sentences. Ryan quick save Romano. I'm immortal, but don't tell. If you disrespect my daughter, Augustus interrupted him, his voice booming like thunder, I will kill you. Yes, Lightning Dad. Augustus' eyes narrowed dangerously. He did not like the nickname. If you break her heart, I will kill you. Yes, Lightning Dad, Ryan repeated, returning the man's vicious gaze. By now, he understood that submission would be seen as weakness, but open defiance wouldn't be tolerated. He had to assert himself, without being too disrespectful. If you break up with her, I will kill you. Yes, Lightning Dad. Thank you, Father, Livia whispered in relief, holding Ryan's hand. Augustus stormed out of the room, coldly furious. He didn't spare a glance to Ryan, and did his best to ignore him. The tyrant punched a wall on his way out, his fist going through stone like paper. Ryan coughed. That's almost exactly how I expected to meet your parents. Are you insane? Livia hissed when her father was gone. Couldn't you wait for me to wake up before wandering off? He could have killed you. I wanted to prepare your breakfast, Ryan replied, pointing at the silver platter. The coffee cups were gone, but the pastries had survived. Livia's anger immediately turned into a blush, and she gave him a bittersweet smile. We'll go to Venus and Narcinia, she said. They will cure your wounds in no time. It's fine. It can wait a little. Ryan, you were struck by lightning. Wouldn't be the first time. Do you have ointment? Livia frowned at his question, but nodded. Good. I will put some on while you return to bed. And then what? And then I will bring you breakfast properly this time. You're such a gallant fool, Livia said with a chuckle, before helping him rise back to his feet. How did you imagine it? Me introducing you to my father. With your daddy pointing a shotgun at my back, and Bacchus officiating the wedding. She giggled. I wouldn't count on it. Bacchus worships a stranger god than the Catholic churches. Her pale fingers brushed against his wound. The skin hurt, but his heart was soothed. We will still go to Venus after breakfast. I told you before, Ryan, you don't have to suffer anymore. Ryan put his hands around her waist, while she moved her hands around his neck. And next breakfast? What will it be? Livia smiled, and briefly kissed him on the lips without a word. Strawberries then. Chapter 100 November 20th, 2004, Vatican City. An atheist had once told him that though he never believed in God Almighty, the Chapel Sistine made him doubt. How could anyone question the existence of God in this room? Cardinal Andreas Tork had seen many sinners repent in tears the moment they raised their head at the ceiling, to witness the glorious work of Michelangelo. No man's heart could remain unmoved at this architectural and visual perfection. Most only remembered the creation of Adam part of the frescoes, but Michelangelo had painted many more stories, each marvelous in their own way. The cardinal could spend hours marveling at this divine feast for the senses. And the sight of tourists taking pictures of this wonder without appreciating it made him weep inside. But these were not the opening hours of the Vatican museums. Only a single man's footsteps echoed in the chapel to join his superior, as the clock struck midnight. Father Tork, Inquisitor Ambrosio greeted the cardinal, dressed in the black garments of the Roman Catholic Church. Ambrosio was more than 20 years Andreas' senior, his head balding, his golden beard falling off at the edges. Yet his green eyes shone with the same witch fire that warmed Andreas' heart. Andreas Tork was one of the youngest cardinals in the Catholic Church, by decree of His Holiness Jean Paul II. He had not yet reached 40. Many had questioned his appointment, his virtue, and his achievements. He had no great deed to his name, and he liked it this way. His work was best done in the shadows. The Malleus Maleficarum, the Vatican's secret service, did not exist, even to most of its members. The Church was officially neutral in world affairs, and only worked through its extensive diplomacy network. It was a lie, of course. The Catholic Church had many enemies, and needed fiery swords as much as quills. The Malleus Maleficarum's purpose was to keep His Holiness aware of all dangers threatening the true faith, and to advance the Catholics' interests across the world. When Andreas had joined the service, he had been nothing more than an inquisitor, the lowest rank of the secret fraternity. The future cardinal had spent most of his career undermining the communist plague that had infected Eastern Europe, and revitalizing the Church's influence in the broken USSR's regions. When he eventually became the organization's Inquisitor General 7 years ago, Andreas Tork had worked on His Holiness' behalf to check the influence of terrorist groups in the Middle East. Even though Jean-Paul II was on his deathbed, surrounded by scheming cardinals, the Malleus Maleficarum worked tirelessly to fulfill the Pope's wish of universal peace. In short, Andreas Tork was used to fighting human evil. But the horrors they were facing nowadays were something else entirely. Something unnatural. The two priests sat on a bench, with Ambrosio giving his superior a 25-page-long file. Only 2 words were written on the cover. Stanford Incident. Andreas' eyebrows furrowed deeper with each line he read, and the priest outright scowled when he reached the first picture. Who else knows? Tork asked. Only the Americans for now. Annas. Father Ambrosio joined his hands, a thoughtful frown on his face. But a video already made its way on the internet. It's only a matter of time before MI6 and the Russians find out too. The internet made keeping secrets from the world harder than ever. The cardinal was surprised the Americans could keep something that big under wraps, but he wondered for how long. They could hide a village's destruction, but not a roaming monster. The photo showed an abomination straight out of the deepest pits of hell. A white-skinned, faceless beast lifting a car as easily as a chair. The arms were abnormally long, and a luminous light glowed where the face should have been. Considering the height difference with the man it crushed underfoot, the monster had to be 6 meters tall at the very least. A shroud of blue mist surrounded it like swirling winds. All his life Andreas had only ever seen the hand of man at work. But that thing. What could it be but a true demon of flesh and blood, as described in the Holy Scriptures? This is Satan's work, Andreas declared firmly. A demon. This was a man, Father, Ambrosio replied grimly, sending shivers down the cardinal's spine. Keep reading. Andreas skimmed the report's content, summarizing it out loud. It helped him memorize information. Stanford, Nevada, 202 inhabitants. On its way to becoming a ghost town since their iron mine dried up. Half of them are dead or missing, and the other half in government custody. The event happened on November 14, 6 days before the report reached the cardinal. According to survivors, the monster had burst out of the local clinic at around 7:30 in the evening, and gone on a rampage. The beast tore men apart with its bare hands, and breathing the mist that followed in its wake turned people feral. By the time survivors managed to contact the authorities and the government quarantined the area, the monster had escaped into the Mojave Desert. The lack of internet and telephone coverage had made it hard for the government to respond quickly, but easy to cover it up afterward. Always the same pattern. All the previous incidents took place in similarly isolated areas, the cardinal noted. But never with such deadly consequences, Ambrosio replied. The monster is out there, and the USA's government hasn't caught it yet. It won't stay hidden forever. No, it won't. Whoever was responsible was getting bolder, more reckless. Andreas flipped the page, until he found the picture of a thuggish-looking man so skinny, that the cardinal wondered if he suffered from malnutrition. James Poole. Some dirt-poor repairman, Ambrosio said. He was due to receive a second shot of tetanus vaccine, after the first was found to be a placebo. The town's doctor, Jason Hopfield, was supposed to receive him at 7:30. The report indicated that the doctor's body had been found in the wreckage, gutted chin to growing like a fish. Both the vaccines came from a private company called New Age, Ambrosio continued. You know the Americans, they always mistrust their healthcare. Some think their government puts microchips in them, and so they look for alternative sources. A microchip would have been a kinder fate than turning into a monster. Andreas offered a prayer to both the doctor and patient. What do we know of this company? Little, except that paper trail leads nowhere. The cardinal grit his teeth. So it's another dead end? Not quite, Ambrosio said, as his superior flipped the report's pages. The town's sheriff took a picture of the vaccine's deliverer. Something about her behavior unsettled him. Her. That woman again. Andreas quickly found her photo, and scowled. It was her, short black hair, blue eyes, eminently plain, 30-something. She had worn a cap when she made the delivery, but it was the clearest picture of her that Mamalius Malfacarum had found so far. November 14th, November 14th. A doubt wormed its way into the cardinal's mind. At which hour was this photo taken? He asked his fellow priest. Universal Time Coordinated. 1 UTC, I think. Torque closed the file, clenching his jaw. Inquisitor Silas sighted her near an illegal laboratory in an Uzbekistan frontier town at 2 UTC, before he went silent. They hadn't yet recovered the body, but though the cardinal prayed for his agent's survival, he knew better than to expect it. The laboratory had turned into a smoking ruin by the time reinforcements arrived, with Silas nowhere to be found. Ambrosio registered the words and frowned. Are you sure it was her? Silas' description matched that photo. The agent had been tracking the individual down for a year, since she had been sighted during the Burning Woman incident in Tajikistan. How can a woman move between two sides of the earth within an hour? Or she was in two places at once. Who was that woman? What was that woman? Some kind of witch or demon? Have you used our facial recognition software on the photo? Yes, and it came up with a name, Ambrosio replied. Though most priests were too old to understand new technology, the Malleus Maleficarum had invested heavily in them, to always keep an advantage. Combined with the previous sketches, the program came up with a name, Ava Faber. Ava Faber, Ava Faber. The name sounded familiar. Thankfully, Andreas had a prodigious memory, and he quickly remembered where it came from. The Gapan French files, he said. The Antarctica mass suicide of 1992. The French kept a not-so-secret archive about UFO's sightings, and Andreas heard rumors that they intended to make a few of the files public. But none of the truly interesting ones, of course. France might have split from the Catholic Church a century ago, but the faith still had friends in high places. A French general had shared with the Malleus Maleficarum a copy of the Gapan files. Some of them were quite disturbing. Much like many countries in the world, the French maintained a presence in Antarctica. They had an official research station there, studying penguins. But Torque knew for a fact that France once had a second, secret laboratory deeper inland called Station Orphan. Secret, because the station had been dedicated to studying bacteriological weapons away from civilization. Ava Faber had been the base's lead geneticist. On the night of December 12, 1992, Station Orphan contacted the French Ministère de la Défense to inform them of a peculiar event, Andreas whispered. The scientists saw a flash of purple light in the skies, and then an unidentified object crashing in a glacier nearby. The French authorities had lost contact with the station 2 days afterward. When French soldiers reached the station to investigate, they found 22 of the 23 researchers dead. An experimental, deadly bacteria had escaped and infected the staff. The soldiers thought it had been an accident, until they checked the radios and found them sabotaged. Though almost all the researchers had been accounted for, Ava Faber's body was never found. The French government quietly covered up the incident, and after 5 years of searching for the missing scientist, closed the file. Ava Faber had probably caused the outbreak before killing herself, they figured. Isolation drove men and women mad. Neither had the investigators found any trace of a meteorite impact, not even with satellite surveillance. The event had joined the other strange tales of the Gapan files, and been forgotten. Ambrosio searched inside his garment for a photo, which he handed to his superior. Torque raised an eyebrow, before comparing it to the sheriff's snapshot. Not only could Ava Faber teleport, but she hadn't aged in nearly 12 years either. Somehow, the cardinal wasn't even surprised. How cold? Andreas asked, after putting all the pictures inside the file and closing it. The new H-lead, I mean? The Americans couldn't find anyone employed by this company, but my informers had more luck with the vehicle used for the delivery, Ambrosio explained. It was purchased through an American shell company, owned by a Swiss bank. Probably the same bank that funded the illegal lab in Uzbekistan. Find someone and make them talk, Andreas ordered. These incidents are escalating in severity, which means they're building up to something. A confessor informed me that one of the bank's administrators could be open to collaborating with the church's investigation. For the sake of his soul. For the sake of his bank account. In this era of greed, mammon ruled absolute. How much? The cardinal asked, and scowled deeply when his agent told him the amount. That's a hefty price. Even Judas only asked for 30 silver coins. Traders are more expensive than ever nowadays, Father Torque. Supply and demand. I will have to ask for his help then. Thankfully, he was the next appointment. I will wire the money to the usual account. Do not fail. Ambrosio took a deep breath. If I may ask, Inquisitor General, what are we investigating? I don't know, the cardinal admitted, and that's what I'm afraid of. Communists, terrorists, they are all humans in the end. But that woman, and these abominations. They are something else. You think time is running out? How can you doubt it now? The cardinal asked. If this snapshot made it to us, then it means she isn't hiding anymore. His Holiness will perish soon, and then there will be a time of crisis. The Church must act now, before it is too late. May the Lord be with us, Ambrosio prayed before taking his leave, leaving the cardinal alone in the chapel. Andreas' eyes wandered to the ceiling, to the side of God's hand reaching for the first man. He pondered how events had progressed to today, inexorably. A string of disappearances in early 2002, all in the southern hemisphere. Brazil, South Africa, Australia, Tanzania. Hundreds had vanished without a trace, with nothing to tie them together. Nothing, except the fact they happened in isolated areas, and the same woman had been sighted in 3 of the cases. Then people started vanishing in the northern hemisphere too. 2003. A woman spontaneously caught fire in Tajikistan, killing 14. A laboratory was discovered in Siberia, with human test subjects found inside. Some had extra organs, or limbs, and all were missing people from last year. A scaled thing capable of turning invisible was caught on tape in Utah. As for 2004, a man had shot a Serbian war criminal in his own home, only for authorities to learn that the killer had been made of bolts and wires. Sarajevo suffered from unexplained earthquakes, people swearing that they heard gears moving below the earth. And now this? Andreas Torque was finally starting to see the bigger picture, the trend that united all these events into a coherent narrative. It clicked when he had heard the word vaccine. Tests. Eva Faber was testing something on people, turning them into monsters. That was the only explanation that made sense to Andreas Torque, though he couldn't understand whatever science or sorcery made it possible. Whatever the case, this wicked woman was a threat to the world's natural order, and she had to go. The cardinal would find Eva Faber before she claimed more victims. He would listen to her tale, let her confess her sins so that she might earn absolution from the Lord. And then he would burn her like a witch. Andreas looked away from the ceiling, as he heard new footsteps. Ambrosio's had been soft, careful. These ones were firm, heavy with power and purpose. The man that walked in the chapel was in his mid-50s, a veteran of half a dozen mob wars, a titan in a red suit bought with drug money. The cardinal could almost hear the blood dripping from his hands, though they looked clean. His cold, heartless eyes didn't hide anything. One couldn't see this man and not doubt for a second about his true nature. Janus, the cardinal said. Andreas, the man answered with a shark-like glint in his eyes. You look concerned. I am. We live in strange, dangerous times. The cardinal invited the mafioso to sit down, but he declined. The bench is warm. I would prefer we meet in the classical art gallery, the mob boss replied. Unlike any sensible soul, he didn't even bother looking at the ceiling. Janus Augusti was a godless man, but he served the Lord all the same. What is on your mind, my friend? Janus asked, looking down on the seated priest. Though many men would have shaken in dread at this man's presence, Andreas Torque remained serene. I assume this must be urgent to organize this meeting so late. I will go straight to the point. The cardinal took a deep breath, having hoped not to resort to this. I need millions. You will have your funds. If you clean them. Of course. Some officials in the Vatican Bank laundered mafia money to fill their pockets, but Andreas Tork did it for a higher cause. The Malleus Maleficarum needed a black budget, independent from the Holy City's finances to maintain plausible deniability. It was a dirty job, but all was forgiven if done in the Lord's service. Janus was no member of the Malleus Maleficarum though, and the less he knew about the Vatican's secret activities the better. Andreas could tell that if he let this man sink his claws into the organization, he would corrupt it as he did with many others. His influence over the Neapolitan Camorra was almost unmatched, and from what Andreas had heard, he intended to expand. Nobody was able to resist him for long. Unfortunately, Janus Augusti smelled weakness like how a shark could detect blood from miles away. "The situation must be dire for you to ask for so much," he said, examining the priest suspiciously. "If you need my protection, you only need to ask. The Lord protects me. He would not protect you from me, if I wished you harm." A blasphemous boast, but the man was not to be underestimated. He had filled entire cemeteries, cementing his empire of sin with blood and tears. "But I am genuine. You are almost a friend now, and I need men with your talents. I may serve as your wife's confessor, but you are a necessary evil as far as I am concerned, Janus," the cardinal replied. "Let's keep it that way." The mob boss chuckled. "A necessary evil, you say? I suppose it is appropriate. I do separate the worthy from the unworthy. Truly good and strong men wouldn't need my services." Andreas didn't miss the not-so-subtle taunt. "Do you think of me as evil, or weak? There is no good or evil, Andreas, but I do wonder what your Pope would think upon seeing us together. Somehow I doubt he would approve of your work." "What His Holiness does not know cannot harm him," the cardinal replied, though his resolve was slightly shaken. "I do the dirty work needed to keep his hands clean. For the greater good." Janus clearly didn't believe him, if the amused look on his face was any indication. "No matter," he said. "So long as you clean the blood off my family's money so I may pay for my daughter's birthdays, I will let you cling to your delusions." Andreas ignored the taunt, remaining dignified. "How is little Livia?" The mob boss face softened. "She asked me for a pony." The cardinal couldn't help but smile. "She is wise beyond her years, but still a child in the end. My wife says that I'm spoiling her rotten. What would you have me do, Father? Is it a sin to indulge a child?" "I cannot say. I never had one." Janus searched inside his suit. "Speaking of gifts, I have one for you." He threw a small bag full of colored crystals at the priest, who caught it on instinct and immediately frowned in disgust. "What is this?" "Our new product," the mob boss replied with a smile. "I heard you were interested in mind-opening experiments." Andreas flinched, and a smile appeared at the edge of Janus' lips. Many cultures used drugs in an attempt to contact the higher realms of existence, and the cardinal had wondered if perhaps they had stumbled onto something. He had never dared to test his theory on himself, since it would have been a sin, but he couldn't suppress his curiosity. How did Augustus know though? Did he have the cardinal under surveillance? "Take it back," Andreas said. "It was all a power game of some kind. I don't need it." "Is that so? In that case, you can simply toss it in the nearest trash can. If you truly are the good man you believe yourself to be, you will." His smirk widened. "But if I am correct about your true self, then when you are ready to accept your true nature, I will welcome you with open arms." Augustus walked away, leaving Andreas alone with his poison. March 27, 2005. Last Easter. They were inside the Vatican, looking for him. He could hear them behind the chapel's doors, which Andreas had barricaded with benches. They would get through, he knew. None of his agents had been able to evade them for long, and they had kept the cardinal for last. He had failed, and the world had gone mad. The world didn't know it yet, but iron pillars had risen from beneath Sarajevo and half a dozen other cities in the Balkans, pouring out metal men and drones. Other human monsters she had released in the wild. The prototypes, the early test subjects, those who kept their wits. His Holiness had died of natural causes. The Lord had mercifully recalled him to spare him the horror ahead. Father Ambrosio had perished too, but his demise had been less kind. Eva Faber had him shot, alongside his Swiss informer. But before he died, he had sent Andreas enough information to start figuring it all out. But he had never imagined, couldn't imagine, just how deep it went. So they had started hunting him. They had wiped out the Malleus Maleficarum in days, before the church could stop the worldwide distribution. They had known. They had known all along and never cared. Even 6 months ago, Andreas Tork was already too late. Now, the Cardinal understood why he could never find a lead. It was an organization, yes, but an organization of one. They were legion, for they were many. The others were catspaws, dupes, tools to provide her with money and equipment, but never trusted, never knowing anything. She had hired hundreds of companies to make the deliveries, none of them aware that they carried bottled poison to millions across the world. He had tried to warn others, but she was everywhere, always getting in his way. Intercepting his messages, making him fear for his life. Anyone he confided and vanished without a trace. She was not human anymore. Was she ever? He should have gone to Augustus. It all made sense now. Who better than the fiend in human skin to ward away demons? His hand reached for the gun beneath his black garment, and he pointed it at the barred door. The noise on the other side stopped. Had they heard him? Did they know? Andreas Tork saw the flash of blue light behind him, and turned around in panic. There were dozens of them in the chapel. Women in blue suits with strange weapons that looked like rifles made of both flesh and metal. They all were her, but not exactly the same either. Some had eyes of a different color, others different hairstyles. It was her, but in countless variations. Eva Faber. Andreas Tork tried to hide the fear in his voice, but didn't quite succeed. They all smiled, but only one of them spoke. "That was my name once," she said, her voice so deceptively banal. "But I go by the alchemist nowadays." He heard them break the barred door and surround him. "Satan would have been more appropriate," the priest replied, trying to keep the legion at bay by threatening them with his gun. But there were dozens, maybe 100, and he had only 5 shots. "I was as human as you were once, but you are onto something. There are demons out there, Father. But they are not below our feet." Some of them looked at the ceiling. "They are above our heads, in the grim darkness of space. One day they will come for us," another Eva said, with burns on the left side of her face. "In other worlds, they already did." Other worlds? What was this madness? "Stay back," Andreas warned, his finger nearly pulling the trigger. "Stay back." But the circle grew tighter. To take its rightful place as the universal master race, mankind must evolve, one of the mad women said, so close he could almost feel her breath. "Surpass the theory of natural selection, and enter the realm of intelligent design." "Our design," another Eva Faber added, her voice masculine. Tork pulled the trigger, and shot one in the head. She collapsed into blue particles, as if she had never existed. The others were onto him immediately afterward. He thrashed and shot and raged, but in the end, they forced him to his knees and disarmed him. They searched his garment for hidden weapons, and only found the drug Augustus gave him months ago. "What is this?" Eva Faber asked while they examined the substance, though Tork couldn't tell which one. "Hallucinogenic drugs?" He had kept the substance, yes, but only to study it. Never to use it on himself, no. The maidwomen started arguing. "Did we try that during the bonding process?" "I don't think so. We should have. We can still. Results should be interesting." Andreas Tork furiously tried to think of a way out. Why hadn't they killed him yet, like the others? Why did they keep him alive instead of slicing his throat? But then they brought the blue syringe, and he understood. "No," Andreas pleaded, his voice dyeing his throat. The fluid swirled inside its container, as if alive and hungry. "No, please. Just kill me. Don't make me. Don't make me one of those things." "This is a blessing," one said, forcing Augustus' drug through his mouth. It tasted of salt and mushrooms and chemicals. A reward for your persistence, another added, rolling up his sleeve. We should have buried you with your secrets, a third said, stabbing him with the syringe. But killing you would be a waste. Your mind will shatter, a fourth declared. But you will live. The world turned blue as the blue elixir entered his veins, and Andreas Tork screamed. His mind was on fire. The drug and the blue substance in his body reacted together, reality crumbling around him. The chapel's ceiling swirled like an azure whirlpool, shapes collapsing. Colors danced at the edge of his eyes, and the pictures of angels started to whisper to him. Hallucinations. These were hallucinations, nothing more. A dream. But he sensed something else. Something different, something wriggling inside his brain and neurons. The alchemist's poison traveled through his nerves, infecting him like a plague. His whole body seemed to have caught fire, his skin flayed to expose the raw flesh underneath. The pain was excruciating, maddening. Please? He shouted, and the hallucination of angels answered with a screaming chorus. Make it stop. And something listened. His spirit left his kneeling flesh, his mind free of the shackles of the body. His immortal soul was dragged into a great blue vortex, into a place unlike anything he had ever seen. He couldn't see with eyes, no, but images filled his mind. The pain was gone, replaced with ethereal numbness. He had become a thought, an ascending consciousness entering the bright blue world. A realm of numbers and letters, an organized archive of smells and scents and sounds. Books without pages, drives of stray thoughts. A mental world without flesh or blood, where minds were no longer constrained by the storage limits of neurons. This strange dimension had a powerful force at its center, ruling from a throne of information. Andreas' disembodied mind couldn't make sense out of it. It was so large, so big, so complex. Geometric shapes and equations and swirling sentences unified into a single, divine whole. Lord. The cardinal asked, and though he had no mouth to speak with, words came out nonetheless. No. It was God, but not the Lord of the Scriptures. It was neither male nor female. It hadn't created man in its image, for there was nothing human about it. It was a sentient thought, a divine mind without a body, knowledge without a container. A being of pure blue, a sonic force of the cosmos. All the universe's information, focused into a singularity. The entity noticed Andreas, and studied him. Andreas screamed, as the entity ripped his mind open with a stray thought. It shattered the cardinal's brain into a million tiny thoughts, flipped through the man's memories like a child through a book. There was no pain, but no comfort either. For the being, this ultimate one, felt neither love nor hate. Only curiosity. It disassembled Andreas Tork down to his molecules, to figure out the way he worked. Why did it need a heart? Why a brain? How did it fit together? What did Andreas fear? Why did he prefer apples over cheese? Why did he live? What was the underlying logic? Why, how, what? It asked all the questions, and got all the answers. The entity recorded every thought that ever crossed the cardinal's mind, every sensation he ever felt. It broke down his existence to its foundations, to figure out how it all fit together. Andreas Tork didn't know how long it took, perhaps centuries or minutes, but in the end, the Ultimate One understood him more than the human ever knew himself. And then, it cobbled Andreas Tork's mind together. But instead of shoving it back into the human's tiny brain, the Ultimate One shared back. Mysteries of the stars and cosmic principles were revealed to the priest. His questions about man's origins and purpose were answered. The entity taught him the true history of the saints and the prophets he had worshipped all his life. And when it found that the priest wanted more, it taught him mathematics, botany, and chemistry. The knowledge was imprinted into the cardinal's neurons like burning letters. There was no word to describe the experience. It was an unimaginable pleasure, a rapture. Andreas' small, weak human mind briefly melded with the divine consciousness of the supreme entity, basking in its limitless knowledge. For a moment, the human felt whole, truly whole, stripped of all his doubts and fears. He was one with something greater than himself, his sense of self dissolving like a droplet in the ocean. This was heaven. This was God. This was the entity that Andreas had yearned to serve all his life. This was the afterlife he desired, for his mind to meld into this divine consciousness, to become a new neuron in a universe-sized brain. And then it ended, as abruptly as it had begun. The mental connection with the Ultimate One collapsed. His brain was cast down to earth, back into his limited brain, back into his flesh, back into this prison. He was cast out of Eden, the bliss of perfection replaced with the cold sensation of the chapel's floor. Andreas didn't know how long he remained on the floor, crushed and destroyed. He felt numb. He felt numb inside. He was breathing, but he felt dead. Eva Faber was long gone, but he wouldn't have cared even if she had remained behind. His eyes wandered to the Sistine Chapel's ceiling, but all he saw were the human imperfections now. The slight, nearly invisible mistakes in the design, the errors, the ugliness. The work of Michelangelo now looked as crass and disordered as horseshit. Andreas Tork had tasted heaven, and now he found earth hideous. He rose back to his feet, his gun laying on the ground next to the empty drug bag. No. His fingers immediately grabbed the container, his tongue licking the plastic in search for a taste, just a taste of paradise. Send me back. Send me back. He tore the empty bag apart in his despair, and scratched his skull with his fingers. He felt his mind struggling against this bone-shaped prison, trying to escape, trying to ascend, trying to go back. By the end, he felt the blood dripping on his fingernails. He breathed heavily, in despair and tiredness. His mind was clear as water, possessed by one single purpose. His thoughts were no longer splintered, pulling in all directions. Now, he could only think of one thing. Going back. Andreas Tork stumbled out of the chapel, his eyes unblinking, his senses assaulted by the disordered universe around him. The Vatican, the holy city, was trembling, crumbling. But he didn't care. He didn't care anymore about the church, the world of suffering, or Eva Faber. He had to go back to the blue world, back to his new God, back to this blissful afterlife. He walked outside, into the Vatican's gardens, and looked at Rome. It was night, though he couldn't tell if it was still March 27th, or some other night. Whatever the case, he could tell that the alchemist's plan had gone off without a hitch. Everywhere he looked, he saw the signs. Flames spreading out of St. Peter's Basilica. Giant mushrooms growing out of the old historical district. The Ichthys flying through the sky north, towards the Balkans and Sarajevo. The old world was ablaze, and a new world would rise from the ashes. And Andreas Tork couldn't care less. Tope continued. Thanks for listening.